Okay, so let's create a hand-painted seashell together. First thing I'm going to do is put some white matte paint on this shell because you can see it has some coloration and I want it to be a smooth, flat surface. You don't need too much. I'm gonna probably color this with some metallic acrylic pens, so you don't need too much coverage with this acrylic paint because the metallic pens really cover up any discoloration on the shell. And then you want this to dry. Usually only takes a few minutes. They dry pretty quick. And once your shell's dry, you'll want to use, I use this Liquitex iridescent white acrylic paint. And so I put a little bit, I have some on my brush. This one I already started, but you'll just want to paint that acrylic paint on here. You can see it comes out nice and shiny, and I like that because I'll use some acrylic pens on this, but it's nice to have the white iridescent background for the pens. Now I'm going to use my acrylic metallic paint pens to make a design on this seashell. In this case, I'm using some blues and greens. These are my favorite pens that I've found. These are Guangna metallic markers. They cover really well, and the colors are very vibrant, as you can see. On this shell, I'm just painting some lines, kind of following the lines of the shell, which makes it easier to kind of hold your pen stable. Makes it easier to draw straight lines. Once you've done this a few times, it gets easier to make a straight line too. You don't have to necessarily follow the lines of the shell as much. On this shell, I'm just coloring in the bottom, which I think that's a really pretty teal pop of color. And then I realized I needed another line in the middle, so I added a little detail there. This is the final shell. I think it came out really nice. I've received millions of views on this shell on social media in just a few days. Here's another shell that I created recently. I really love the colors on this shell, and I like this negative space here in the middle. I started with some blue here. And then I moved on to some gold around that blue. Just following the lines of the shell, like I said earlier, makes it easier. This is an orange color acrylic paint pen. Continuing to follow the lines of the shell, this time with a purple metallic acrylic paint marker. And then finally added some green. I think this is my favorite shell that I've made so far, and I've been doing this for about 10 months. I just like the way the colors really pop on this shell. It almost looks 3D. I'll share the final shadow box with this shell in it. It's one of my favorites. Here's another shell that I created. This got over 2 million views, I think, on Instagram. It's all different shades of metallic greens. Sometimes it's hard to know what resonates with people when they watch these videos. When I post them on social media outside of Facebook, I speed them up. So the videos are typically only 10 to 15 seconds, which is obviously very short. So I think part of it is that it's kind of mesmerizing to watch as the shell turns and the lines are painted, especially with these vibrant metallic pens. It's enjoyable to watch, and with the ASMR component where you can hear my pen or brush, I think people enjoy that. I find it soothing myself. Sometimes I watch my own videos and just relax. I think I had made this one around St. Patrick's Day. I was inspired by the greens and the whites. I ended up adding a little darker green on this shell, some final touches, and this is the final shell. Here's another shell I created. This one is in shades of blue, once again metallic pens with that white iridescent background, which I really love. I like the way these colors came to a point on this shell. Sometimes you just get lucky when it comes to the way that you paint, and it just sort of came out perfectly. I tried to recreate this and I really couldn't. It was just one of those times where I was able to just create something, a piece of art that is hard to recreate. The way the light hit it, the colors, all of that, you just never know, right? I love that teal that I added in the middle there. I felt like it needed a little something at the ends there, so I added some darker blue. Here's the final shell. I got 7 million views on Instagram on that one. Here's another shell I created. This one I didn't use the metallic pens, or I only used a little metallic. I used more matte colors, and this got over 600,000 views on social media. I was using some different colors on this shell. I like the blues, the greens, and pinks. You'll see as I continue to color this shell in. A little different from some of the other shells I've made recently, but I really liked this color combination. Here you'll see I'm adding the pink detail. I usually go over, especially with these more normal acrylic pens, I usually paint over it twice because there's not enough coverage. With the metallic pens, you don't necessarily need to go over it. I usually do just to clean up the lines a little bit, but you don't usually have to, especially at the top of the shell. Sometimes the white will poke through, so here's the final shell on that one. It's a little different. Here's another shell that I did in more metallic blues. I'm sharing with you all of my top viewed social media videos. Most of these at least 500,000 views. Most of them, I tend to get that number of views pretty quickly, like within 24 hours, 48 hours, tends to drop off after that. But it tells me what people like to see in my art, and it helps me to create new art. Similar to one of the others I showed you earlier, I like the way this came to a point on this shell. You see me there kind of cleaning up the lines a little bit. As a final product. This was a very recent shell I made. I love the colors on this shell. You'll see when I get to the end here. It came out really pretty. Blues, greens, purples, pinks. I like working with a lot of like rainbow colors. It's just so happy and vibrant. I filled in the bottom of the shell there. I wasn't sure if I was going to. I kind of just go with it and see what happens. I think this came out really pretty. Sometimes I do a pattern, sometimes I don't. It just depends on what I'm feeling. There's the final shell. Came out really pretty, I think. Here's another shell I created. Once again, instead of using all metallic markers, I used some regular acrylic paint pens in some really more neon colors. I really liked this one. This got a lot of views too on social media. I like that orange. I don't usually work with orange. I think that's a pretty pop of color. Red too. It's not a color I often use, but I like the way it looks on this shell. This was in a collection I created and created a shadow box with these shells. And these shades, I like them. All right, and we'll move on to the next shell. This is another video that I got a lot of views, likes, shares on, comments. I like these colors. Probably my favorites, teal, pink, especially the metallics. This one I added some green, and I really like that. It's pretty. Once I create a shell like this, if this is the first one in a collection, so to speak, then I'll use those same colors and start a new collection. And then create a shadow box or canvas art with those shells. Sometimes I feel like the shells are too similar in a collection, but I'll share some examples of how I put them together and you can see what resonates with you. That's the nice thing about art. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's whatever you're feeling, whatever inspires you. I love the way this came out with the pinks and blues and purples and greens. Really pretty. One of my favorite collections. There's the final piece. Here's another shell I created. I really like that purple, teal, pink right together like that. And then the pop of blue. Very pretty. I think this went with the prior collection that I just showed you. Very similar colors, style. There's the final shell. And I wanted to share with you just some of the shadow boxes I created from these shells. I like the pinks and purples in that. This is a more neon shell collection I created. Another much more vibrant, more primary colors. I like the sand dollar in the middle of this one and the small shells on the side. I showed you how I painted that bottom one there. I like the black background on this. I think that came out really pretty. This one, I don't know. I like it. It's not my favorite. I love this one. It's hard to sell it. I just want to keep it. This is sort of Easter colors in my mind, like Easter eggs. I like this one a lot, just monochromatic blues with the metallic. I like this one a lot too, the greens and blues. I like this one. I don't know if you all do, but I think the colors are pretty. This is more like Egyptian, I think. Very pretty. This is another, like, a lot of color. I love that. This is another more metallic piece. I love this one too. This is probably my favorite. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something about painting seashells today.